Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 98 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. Today we are joined by a special guest, acoustic specialist, startup founder, and vintage audio repair expert, Ippei Soma.
On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random stuff.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
Japan's top government spokesperson says removing masks outdoors recommended if distance maintained.
SoftBank Group logs net loss of $13 billion in fiscal year 2021.
Japan police urge officers to avoid impression of racial profiling. This week in Japan.
All right, let's get started. Here's this week's top news item. Japan's top government spokesperson says removing masks outdoors recommended if distance maintained.
The Mainichi reported on May 12th that Japan's top government spokesperson has said that removing masks outdoors is recommended if people can stay 2 or more meters apart.
While acknowledging that wearing masks is very important to prevent the spread of coronavirus infections, Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno told reporters at a news conference, quote, "When the temperature and humidity rises, the risk of heat stroke increases, so removing one's mask outdoors when at a distance of 2 or more meters from another person can be maintained is recommended."
Regarding wearing masks in general, including indoors, Matsuno said, "I would like to consider this while seeking the opinions of experts based on the state of infections and the virus's characteristics."
In a news conference on May 11th, Matsuno had stated that it was not absolutely necessary to wear a mask outdoors if a sufficient distance can be maintained.
Well, I don't know about you, Parker, but I'm pretty used to wearing a mask all the time outside.
Yeah, and a lot of people in Japan are, so this is a huge departure from the government's official guidance on the subject.
I think if me and you feel any kind of freaked out about taking off our mask, I imagine the rest of the country would be too, even if we get the okay from the government.
Yeah, and it's a real issue because obviously summer is coming, and if summer in Tokyo is like most summers, it's going to be really, really hot. And so will people take their masks off? And is the government going to ramp up this messaging? This is really the first time the government has suggested taking off masks outdoors, but obviously with this caveat. And I don't know about you, but Aaron, I don't usually have a measuring tape with me when I'm walking around outdoors, so I'm not sure, how 2 meters is going to be measured, Are people going to start carrying around measuring tapes?
It's impossible. It's impossible to do it properly. I mean, I think you either have to say mask mandate is finished or keep wearing a mask, right?
What will they do? Stay tuned.
All right, and up next, SoftBank Group logs net loss of $13 billion in fiscal year 2021.
Kyodo News has reported that SoftBank Group said on May 12th that it posted a record net loss of 1.7 trillion yen, which is $13 billion US, in the business year ended in March 2022 on investment losses after logging the highest profit for a Japanese company the previous year.
The net loss is believed to be the second largest in history ever posted by a Japanese firm, after Mizuho Financial Group Incorporated logged a 2.38 trillion yen loss in March 2003.
The result was a nosedive from the record net profit of 4.9 trillion yen in fiscal 2020, as the values of global tech firms that SoftBank is invested in dropped on their poor business performance amid the pandemic.
SoftBank Group logged an investment loss of 3.43 trillion yen in fiscal year 2021, largely caused by losses posted by its trademarked Vision Fund 1 and Vision Fund 2. Oh, there's two of them now.
And they're equally poorly performing, apparently. So Masayoshi Son, chairman and CEO of SoftBank Group, vowed at a press conference to raise the company's guard to weather the chaotic times for the world economy by raising standards for their new investments and maintaining liquidity on hand, among other efforts. I'm just guessing, Aaron, that they didn't use a unicorn on their slide deck this year.
I'd have to agree. I can't get over the fact I didn't know there were two vision funds. I feel like the meeting where this was decided is actually a pretty good idea, right? It's like, yeah, boss, let's just make another one. And if all goes to shit, we put all the shit stuff in the bad one.
It's Vision Fund 2. It'll be better this time, okay?
I think I'm going to make just another company like with the same name and call it, Shinka Labs 2. And if everything goes to shit, it's like, no, we got a second one. It's doing way better.
Look at the numbers. Yeah. They're amazing. All right, and up next, Japan police urge officers to avoid impression of racial profiling.
Kyoto News has also reported that the National Police Agency issued an advisory to all prefectural police forces to avoid questioning people in a way that could be perceived as racially motivated.
The advisory came after the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo tweeted on December 6th of last year that it had received reports of suspected racial profiling incidents, with several foreigners detained, questioned, and searched by police.
The written advisory read that when choosing who to stop and question, police officers, quote, should not base their decisions solely on how they look, such as appearance and clothing.
Cough, and whether they're a foreigner, cough.
Exactly.
When asked at a news conference about the U.S. Embassy's tweet on the day that it was posted, top government spokesperson Hirokazu Matsuno said police questioning is not carried out based on race or nationality, and officers approach suspicious people in accordance with the law.
However, the preliminary results of a Tokyo Bar Association survey of police treatment of people with foreign roots, released earlier this year, showed that 63% of the 2,094 respondents reported being questioned by the police in the preceding 5 years.
I wonder how those numbers match up to Japanese people. I don't think that 63% of Japanese people are being questioned by the police.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Unless they're riding a bicycle.
Yeah. That's a telltale sign of a criminal right there.
They're always stopping people on bikes. I think that's the one thing where they don't discriminate. If you're riding a bike, you're going to get stopped.
It's funny because in America, like, cops will stop people, call it it's a random traffic stop. And
right.
Show us your license and registration. But in Japan, they never do that. For cars.
For cars, right?
But for bicycles, it's like, let us inspect your bicycle registration, make sure that it's registered in your name.
Yeah. And if anyone's wearing headphones or anything too, it depends on where you live. But there's really strict laws now too, right? With headphones and wearing bikes, which I like to do.
Probably shouldn't say that on air, but the cat's out of the bag, cops. Arrest Aaron. He's the bad guy. So, complaints regarding discriminatory treatment of people with foreign roots living in Japan are becoming increasingly visible on social media, especially if you're looking at my Twitter account, because I follow all the gaijins on Twitter. This happens a lot.
Yeah, so this is an issue that Parker, me, and you have both lived with here in Japan since we've been here. It is interesting to see that they're trying to take some actions to maybe curb this behavior by the police. So I guess that's a good right move in the right direction.
Right, but how are they actually going to enforce this? I mean, are they going to look at the numbers? I'm hopeful, but not hopeful.
Yeah.
All right, and up next, we have a special guest interview with Ippei Soma.
You're now listening to Tokyo Wave.
Ippei is an acoustic specialist, startup founder, and vintage audio repair expert based in Tokyo, Japan.
Originally from Tokyo, Ippei is a graduate of Nihon University's Aerospace, Aeronautical, and Astronautical Engineering faculty.
After graduating from university, Ippei worked for a company running student dormitories, and in 2001, he opened Audio Unity, a shop focused on sales and repair of vintage audio equipment.
Ippei has extensive experience as a technician, servicing high-end audiophile and recording audio equipment by famous brands such as Studer, Nagra, and EMT.
In the course of doing business, Ippei started a friendship with an American inventor and founded Acoustic Innovation in 2006, which develops and markets innovations such as the lung flute and quiet tire technology.
The lung flute device that Ippei brought to Japan provides a lung cleaning method without using drugs or electricity and is now covered by Japanese national health insurance as a method of helping fight tuberculosis in Japan and now around the world.
Ippei's quiet tire technology, which recently participated in the Jetro and Techstars Startup City Acceleration Program Global Scale Pitch Day, is a technology that can be applied to any type of tire and provides a more quiet and smooth driving experience through reducing vibration.
Ippei, thanks so much for joining us today on Tokyo Wave.
Thank you for introducing me. Very good.
Yes, thanks so much for coming on the show. So you said before we started that you studied abroad in South Carolina as a high school student. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was my first experience to be abroad, such a long time, just 1 year. But, I experienced a lot and I learned a lot from American culture, and it's open, and, I was came back being completely different person after that.
Wow. So you were in South Carolina, which is not too far away from Aaron and I's home states of Tennessee and Florida. Of course, the South is its own sort of special area in many ways. And what was it like being a student from Japan in South Carolina when you were a student, which I guess is a long time ago now?
Well, actually, the culture is completely different. But out there, the southern culture is kind of unique in the United States, and I felt a lot of white and black race differences, and of course I called as a Chinese sometimes because the Asian is quite rare at the moment. So, I, learned a lot of things, kind of international cultural things to overcome in the future. And, that was a very nice experience for me to realize a lot of things in the world at the moment.
And so you went straight from being a high school student in Japan to going to South Carolina. What inspired you to do this?
Well, actually, my mother used to be a exchange student in the United States when she was a college student. Yeah, it was about 3 months staying in the States, but she learned a lot from that experience. So she decided to let her son to get that kind of experience. So I just, kind of recommended from her to go there. But it was very, nice decision for me in my life to follow her at that moment.
That's interesting because we actually had another Japanese guest, and he said something similar, that his mother was the driving force behind him studying abroad. However, his experience was a lot more forced than yours. So it's good that it was a suggestion that you took instead of a, hey, you're going to the UK, which was what our last guest said.
Yeah, following the parents' experience one of the things that we can, decide in our life. But, actually, I was away from my parents for 1 year. This was, my first experience at that time. So, this is the kind of the thing to realize the value of our parents and also value of my country, Japan. So, going away from, what we had close is kind of the thing that, we should have in our life to realize the real value of those.
Ippei, I have to ask, I often talk to my Japanese friends about the difference between high school in Japan and high school in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me personally, high school in the US is party time. Like we have prom during senior year. We have dances every year. Did you participate in like prom and all that stuff? And like, how was that, how was that for you?
Well, actually, I didn't participate to proms because I was junior. So I didn't have, a good partner to join at the moment. But actually, the experience there is completely different from Japan. A lot of, actually at that time, Japan had a Saturday school, but in United States, Saturday and Sunday is off day of school. So, those kind of things are completely different for me. But I think, I learned a lot from, using this kind of off time.
It's almost like a vacation.
Yeah, it's almost like the vacation. But, I felt the people in the United States knows how to use that kind of time for their family and, for their friendships and also for their hobbies. So this kind of the way to, enjoy the life at that, kind of occasion is a very good, example for me in my life so far.
So I had the opposite experience when I was in high school. I did a brief study abroad in Iwate Prefecture. And it was a huge gap in experience because I went from American high school and, people are skipping class and smoking weed and everybody's driving to school because from, age 16, you can have a driver's license in the United States. And going to Japan, the experience was so different. People are serious. They're, not partying all the time. And, this whole thing about like, dating. And in American high school, you see people kissing and holding hands and none of that in Japanese high school. So it's the absolute opposite experience.
Yeah, that's right. Japanese culture and also the high school age is regarded as very kind of serious time for us to develop, our, I suppose, culture, for life. So kind of discipline is kind of one of the things that we should learn during the high school age. So they are kind of wearing the uniforms, most of the high school in Japan. So, we have been learning a lot of those disciplines during the high school age. But I felt, when I was in the United States, we should have, look into something different so that we can, get more for our lives. So, it's so different, and we should have, both of the good points.
Ippei, I really liked your comments on how in America you learned how to really use the time off. That's one quality I just don't see a lot here in Japan, right? My Japanese friends, when they're almost always working. Like even when they get home from work, they're doing email or they're online emailing their colleagues. It kind of never ends. But in America, like when people get off work, they're not working. They're done. Time to go out, time to have fun.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like Americans, like they actually stop working at like 5.
Yeah, even 4. Some places stop at 4.
Crazy.
Yeah. When I go back, I'm always like, damn, so different.
Let's go have dinner at 6. Like, you never say that in Japan. It's like, What are you, the CEO? Nobody gets dinner at 6.
So, Ippei, while you majored in engineering, after graduation, you took a very different career path. And a few years later, you opened up your own shop. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, actually, I learned aerospace engineering. So it is about some machines and machinery engineering. So, that was good for me because I can use my skills of, fixing things and servicing things and making things out of nothing. So those kind of the things I have learned from, my university age. And actually afterward, I, joined kind of an educational organization, which is dealing with university students. And I worked at dormitory for them. So at the moment, the dealing with people is kind of almost the same as dealing with some machines to fix. The university students are coming to the university, but they have a lot of problem because of their, what they have been learned and, what they have experienced in their lives. So, I talked a lot with them to overcome their difficulties and, change their, change it better for their lives, they changing their nature. So this kind of stuff I have done with dealing with those university students. And afterwards, I decided to utilize my skills to fix, most of the machines. So, I changed direction to, originated to some kind of engineering and fixing items. So, I started up the audio shop. So this is, the people to, real machine. So almost the same as to, those kind of aligning and fixing things.
So one really interesting thing that you mentioned before we started is that when you founded your shop, it was also influenced by the prevalence and the growing nature of Yahoo auctions, which of course is the Japanese equivalent to eBay. And you had noticed like a lot of, old audio equipment being sold, perhaps very cheaply, and you saw that as an opportunity. Could you tell us more about how that really turned into you deciding to go into business for yourself?
Well, actually, I have seen a lot of items already actually on the garbage, and they are kind of trashing everything because they are not working anymore. So, I felt like, those kind of nature and those kind of culture is not right. We should try to fix it and, and recover it, use it again. So, I felt like those auction culture is kind of rising up those, I would say, the good for the earth, not trashing everything, but, servicing it and fixing it and, even selling it to the other people if you are not using it anymore. So, I felt like, this kind of culture, I should, participate into it. So I just started over, this kind of the fixing and servicing items and, kind of recycling to sell it in the auction. So this is kind of the, what I felt started and motivate me to start this new shop.
Yeah, Parker, you and Matt from Akiya Inaka have introduced me to the realization that here in Japan, there's just so much hardware, so much physical goods that are kind of just sitting there, almost like in the trash. And then there's these chains of stores like Hard Off that just have so many like golden nuggets. So Ippei, I love your idea and your devotion to kind of servicing that opportunity that exists here, because this could even go as far as refurbishing things and selling them to Americans and to people abroad. There's just like there's so much treasure here in Japan, I feel like.
No, it's really funny. It's almost like he read the future, because, I mean, this whole recycle culture that we have now didn't exist in 2001. I mean, even when I was a student, in university in Japan 15 years ago, I would see exactly what he saw. People would throw away perfectly good stuff just because it was, old. Maybe not even because it was broken, but just because they were done with it. Buy. Put a sticker on it and put it on the curb.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, in Japan, at that time, the culture is completely kind of changing everything when it is old. So, actually, it still continues in Japan with some buildings and houses. And, they are kind of fond to live in the new houses. But actually, those kind of culture, changing everything, they're not kind of respecting the vintage and all the items and all their old houses. And actually, it's now changing some way, but in the deep into Japanese culture, I think there has been something that is throwing away the old items and old things. So, it's very, funny that we have a very long history so far, and we have the very, old buildings and old temples and those kind of stuff. But people living in Japan is kind of, throwing away some, audio items, old items and, old houses. So I think, I'm not sure what causes this kind of culture here in Japan. But, I think maybe United States or, Europe has a better culture to respect the old houses and old items. So, I feel like, Japanese culture should change that way to respect more about some vintage items and vintage stuffs.
And so this takes me back to how we first met. When I was a student at International Christian University in Mitaka, one day I walked past Ippei's shop near Musashi Sakai Station on my way back home. As I was passing by, I saw in big letters, Audio Unity. Being a vintage audio nerd since high school, I knew that I had to check it out, and the rest is history. But I didn't know how you got started into the vintage audio trade. And I have a question. How did you learn to work on all of this big, high-end audio equipment?
Well, actually, I have a skill to fix things and understand the actual concept and maybe how it was made in the past. So, well, actually, I imported a lot of, those high-end audio items. Mostly, they are studio equipments. I open it up and see it inside and, look into some of the schematics. So, I understood, how it was made. So, these kind of skills I have, at that time, and I still have those. So, I started to use my skill to fix things. So, this kind of the kind of the thing that is started from my skill, and I, decided to utilize it for my life. So I started that business, and I met with Parker, in that course, and he was kind of, I remember that, the time that he staring down to my shop, and, I was very excited to see such a young boy was a vintage audio, enthusiast at that time. So it was nice to, meet him, at that day. I remember that.
I remember going downstairs, and I mentioned in the introduction, brands like Studer, Nagra, and EMT. As a student, I had not even known about these brands, but you just look at this audio equipment and everything is made out of metal. It just looks so cool. And then inside the shop, in order to work on this audio equipment, you have to, be able to measure, what's working and what's not working. And so I also saw all of these big oscilloscopes. It was like being in like the situation room for audio equipment. And I was just blown away by all of this stuff. And I just, my like appetite for knowledge was like sent to stratospheric levels. And I don't know how many times I bothered Ippei-san in the course of being a student, but I must have gone there like 100 times maybe.
Oh, wow.
And so one day later on, after I had started working, I remember while I was talking to you, probably about fixing one of my amplifiers, you mentioned this lung flute. What's the background story there?
Well, actually, one of my seller from the United States was an inventor of the lung flute. Yeah, he was a acoustic engineer who are designing some studios, recording studios, and he has an invention in his mind that is to liquidate the stacked sputum within the airway. So actually I was buying things from him, and he was kind of, starting up his company for this invention. So, some of the talk, and we haven't met each other yet, but, he told me to start up his company, and he would like to get support from me. So I invested into his company to start up. And, his item is very innovative, which is not using any electricity, and just blowing into the device makes things happen. And this blowing, makes very low frequency noise, and, this shockwave will came into one's lungs so that it will liquidate all the sputums and goos, which is obstructing the breathing because of it. So, it will make the lung cleaned, and the sputum will come up after blowing it, for a couple of times. And, this will help a lot of people to get out of those get out of those, what is it called? Stacking airways. So this is a kind of the story that I have met, this guy who are inventing, great item for the people, helping people to get out of bad lungs and bad airways.
And so the first time I heard about this, I thought, this can't be real. And it's this really simple device. It just looks like, it's like this big. It looks like a fan. And you blow into it, and what it does, as he just explained, is the low frequencies loosen basically the mucus that's inside your lungs. And of course, if you're a normal person, the mucus is naturally absorbed into the lungs and there's no problem. But if you have an ailment such as bronchitis or like a really bad sort of infection,
maybe COVID.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different applications for this, but basically using this very simple device, you can obviously loosen that mucus and, I mean, it's kind of gross, but cough it up.
Right.
If you are sick, this is a lifesaver.
Wow. So your friend invented this and then you brought it to Japan?
Yes, that's right. I brought up one here so I can show you.
Oh, you have one here in the studio.
Yeah, just a moment.
You're going to freak out when you see this, Aaron.
It doesn't use electricity.
It just uses your breath.
Wow.
You breathe into it and it works its magic.
Oh, wow.
Behold the lung flute.
Okay.
So the reed is gonna generate very low frequency noise.
I see. It's open. Okay, so you blow into it, it generates a low frequency noise.
And if you've got mucus that's, of course, stuck in your lungs, it will help you to cough it up.
So just to explain to our viewers, this is probably just one foot in length, and it's just a small, it looks like it could be like a recorder mouthpiece or some kind of instrument mouthpiece, but just goes into some kind of plastic cube, which is open. This is really cool.
It looks like something that you would use at a soccer game, like a vuvuzela, right?
Vuvuzela.
Yeah. It looks like something that's terribly simple, but for the person who came up with it, genius, because the work that it does and how it helps. Wow. I bet these were in demand during COVID, no?
Yeah, well, actually, I have reported that some of the friends who got COVID used it very well, and they've got very quick recovery from the COVID so far.
Oh my gosh. Can you get these on Amazon, or do I have to buy one from you?
Well, it's on the web.
Oh, it's on the web. Okay.
You can buy it if you liked it.
Cool.
Yeah, and so you'd think, of course, with such an interesting and, I mean, forgive me for saying this, but wacky, but genius innovation like the lung flute, one masterful invention was enough, but apparently it wasn't. So before we started, you were also explaining this new tire technology, and it just blows my mind that you figured out something that none of the world's best tire engineers seemed to understand. But you created this new tire technology that helps tires become quieter and more fuel efficient, and even extend the life of the tire using reduced vibration, which is kind of the exact opposite of the lung flute. You want the vibration, but with this tire technology, by reducing the vibration, you really have invented something that doesn't exist anywhere else, to my understanding. So what is your story behind this innovation, and what is your plan to use this to become Japan's next billionaire?
Thank you very much. Well, actually, it came up from the same inventor. His name is Mr. Sanford Hawkins. So Mr. Hawkins is a kind of the acoustic engineer. And also he's a kind of very genius about imaging what is happening to generate the noise and vibration. So, he kind of concentrated into what is happening within the tire to generate noise and, transcending the shock waves throughout the tire carcasses. So, he just realized that he can do something to reduce noise for tire and, automobile compartment. So he was asked by some of the big car company to reduce noise for the tire. So, and he's got idea to reduce noises at that time. But actually that device didn't work, but we worked with some big car company and tire companies with that, previous device. And actually, while the course of that development, he kind of come up with another invention. Currently, we are working with a paint, which is to reduce noise and vibration of the car. Then this paint should be painted within the tire inner surface. So this will be kind of very easy to do. And right now, actually, this kind of inventions came up from this Mr. Hawkins. And well, actually, it's the same inventor of the lung flute. Lung flute itself is using very low frequency noise, and he is very good understanding low frequency noise vibration and generation. So, what is done with the tire is reducing very low frequency noise, which is almost the same as the vibration. So, he has done a lot with his brain to understand what is happening in the tire. And now we have got this invention ready for the marketing.
Yeah, this just reminds me of the Prius. And when the Prius came to America, my dad got a Prius as soon as it came. And it freaked me out at how quiet it was. But it was also it was so amazing. How is it that quiet? So yeah, Japan's always been kind of a leader and kind of this, I'd say noise reduction, and it's also reminding me of, my first time visiting Japan. And really, as soon as you get to Narita Airport or Haneda Airport, the biggest thing I always notice when I come back, if I've been in the States for a month or so, is Japan is just so quiet, right? So it's just interesting to think this kind of technology being developed in Japan to make technology more quiet is so effective, right?
One, it's really interesting too, because it's tire technology. You can apply it to any tire. You can apply it to a car tire. You can apply it to an aircraft tire. You can apply it to a bicycle tire, any kind of tire. And to be perfectly honest with you, I heard about this, and again, I was like, how can this work? You put some stuff on a tire and it becomes quiet. It just sounds too good to be true. And even if such a technology existed, why didn't Michelin or Yokohama or Toyo why didn't any of the big guys figure this out themselves? And so it just blew my mind. And so similarly to the lung flute, I was like, I couldn't put two and two together. But actually, Ippei was adamant that you must try this technology and I will do it for you. And so give me a tire to apply this technology to, and I want you to see the difference for yourself. And me, of course, never one to turn down a good deal, said, awesome, let's do it. And it was interesting because at the time I had just got my first 4x4 SUV, and I really wanted to do what 4x4 SUVs are designed to do, to go off-road, into the mud, into the rocks, and do all of those crazy things that you can do when you have a big car with big power. Mm-hmm. But you also need big wheels. And if you've ever driven a off-road 4x4 SUV with big off-road tires, you know they are loud as hell. And really, they're the loudest kind of tires. And I didn't really think about it too much, but doing research online, I found there is a very simple reason for this loudness. The wider the gap in the tire tread, the higher the noise, because that's sort of basically, if there's a small gap in the tire tread, and most, summer tires or all-season tires don't have a very large gap, there's not that much sort of air noise. And so the tire is quiet. However, if you look at like winter tires or studless tires, as they're referred to in Japan, these have a wider gap in the tread. And that's very simply because if you're in snow country, you don't want to get stuck in the snow. And so these snow tires have a wider gap in the tread so that you can get better traction in the snow. And then beyond the winter tires and the snow tires are off-road tires, which have even wider gap in the tread because you're not talking about snow anymore. You're talking about mud and rocks and leaves and stuff. And so literally off-road tires are the loudest kind of tires you can put on a car. And so I thought, all right, if this invention is really that special, it should be able to make the loudest kind of tires less loud. And so I mentioned this to Ippei and he said, sure, let's try it. Sounds like a great case study. And so now outside the studio is my car with the loudest tires I could find for my car with the technology applied. And we actually just did a test drive, and even he was surprised at how quiet it was.
Wow.
It's like driving with normal car tires, even though the gap is huge. They're these big, bulky off-road tires that look like something you would climb a mountain with. Actually, I got these tires because as a car nerd, I saw a few years ago, Land Rover, which is the make of the car, actually did a stunt, like a PR stunt, where they used one of their cars to climb these super steep steps in Thailand, like to the top of this temple. And they made this big challenge out of it. I mean, it was like a Guinness World Record or whatever. And literally, it's like a 45-degree angle, and this car is like going, and it's this professional driver, and he's driving up at full speed. And it was so cool. And I was able to get the same tires.
Oh, wow.
But unlike those tires, which I'm sure are very loud and annoying driving at normal speeds, my tires are super quiet because of this crazy technology. Literally, I just changed from my winter tires, which, they're kind of loud, but not that loud, to these big, massive off-road tires. And with the technology, they're not just quieter than the winter tires, they're about the same decibel level as the tires that I had, regular tires, before I changed to these new tires using this technology. Total difference. It blows my mind.
Crazy. The first thing I think of, I mentioned just a second ago, Japan seems a lot quieter than the US. I feel like if you were pitching this idea to an American investor, he might say, well, if you can make those tires quieter, can you make them louder? So what I'm basically saying is, could this technology also be used to make the tires even louder?
Well, actually, what's unique about this is it is using a non-Newtonian fluid behavior to reduce tire noise. And kind of, the louder noise coming at the contact patch between road and tire. So it is kind of the things that it will stabilize the contact patch. So I think, we can't make it louder. But actually, the contact patch between road and tire is stabilized, and it will be smooth, and the shock wave happening within the tire is kind of almost reduced and shut down because of the that device.
So this is my first time to hear about the way tires work. It makes sense. It's like an instrument, right? Like a flute. If you don't hold anything down, you get a lower note. And as you finger and as you press down more keys on the flute, the notes go higher. So you're narrowing the air passageway to get a higher frequency, as opposed to being open and letting all the air flow through, which is a lower frequency. And I totally forgot what I was going to ask.
Well, actually, the non-Newtonian fluid behavior is kind of the happening within the water and cornstarch compound mix. So, sometimes people are, punching it, but it will act as a solid when punched. But after that, when people push that liquid, it will be acting as a liquid. So it's going to stick to your hand. But when you're punching it, it won't stick to your hand. This kind of behavior is, happening within the tire. The thickness of the device, paint is less than 0.5 millimeter. And it is very thin, but it is something happening within that layer. I think, the inventor has kind of completely different vision what is happening inside that layer. But in fact, it is working inside the tire. And most of the tire and car companies trying to reduce noises and vibration in the past. But they have never come up this kind of idea using non-Newtonian fluid behavior. So this is very unique and innovative item at the moment.
Very cool. And I just remembered my question. Does this invention have anything to do with lowering the resonant frequency of the tire? Because I know, like for me, like with mixing, everything has a resonant frequency, right? And it can be difficult sometimes to figure out where that is. But once you figure it out, and if you lower the EQ just on the resonant frequency, it changes the sound completely. So is there something going on with that?
I think, this device is detuning the frequency, resonance frequency of the tire.
Ah, okay.
So normally the tire is the vibration of the tire is circulating in the tire while driving.
Mm-hmm.
But, this causes kind of the resonance within the tire. But the shock wave will be kind of, reduced and will not circulate within the tire. So it will kind of detuning all the resonance happening in the tire.
Whoa.
So it won't, make noises as normal tire does.
That's so cool. Who knows what other kinds of applications this could have? Maybe this could help us travel space into other planets more easily.
Well, I think, some other application is, possible in the future. But, the tire market itself is very huge in the world at the moment. So we now focusing into that tire technology.
Very cool.
Well, I mean, I feel like our minds have been blown. And so it's hard to really wrap our minds around this technology. And just to say, anyone who is listening to this, it's like, ooh, I'm going to copy that idea. Well, unfortunately, it's already been patented. So
So it is patented in Japan, Korea, China, and United States, and already in EU.
Wow. Good job.
Yeah, I'm sure the tire companies are like, shit. They're going to have to pay this guy some money first. So thank you so much for coming on Tokyo Wave today. In closing, Ippei, I just wanted to ask if there is anything you'd like to tell our listeners about your startups or any shout outs that you would like to make.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this great show here. Well, actually, my company is very limited in the resources, and so far we have been kind of bootstrapped and using our personal money to develop it and now marketing it. But if you're interested into this device and this technology, I think you can help us in a way for the marketing and financing and whatever to realize its innovative idea to help people and help this society in the future. So, what I would like to say is just if you're interested in to join my journey, please contact me anytime.
Great. And so, long story short, you want to become a billionaire together with Ippei, send him some money. And if you need to reach out to him, reach out to us and we'll connect you.
Yes, Ippei, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Hey listeners, that's right, you listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.